Hi, and welcome to the third video in the series. In this video, we are going to be learning about the legislative branch. But before we begin, let's do a small recap on what we studied or what we've seen in the past videos. What we saw was that the Constitution of India is the utmost law, it is the most supreme power, and it lays down the provisions and the rules for everything that the government is supposed to do. The constitution has virtually separated the government into three distinct branches or entities. We have the legislative branch, we have the executive branch, and finally we have the judiciary branch. The legislative branch comprises of the parliament, which is nothing but the president, the Lok Sabha, and the Rajya Sabha. The executive branch comprises of the president, the vice president, the prime minister, and the union cabinet. The judiciary branch comprises of the Supreme Court, the chief justice, and the associate justices. The legislative branch and the executive branch work quite closely with each other, and the executive branch, in fact, is responsible to the legislative branch in the sense that if the Lok Sabha, if the members of the parliament, if the members of the Lok Sabha feel that the prime minister and the union cabinet are not doing their due diligence or their due duty, they can actually pass a motion of no confidence, which will cause the prime minister and the union cabinet to resolve or to effectively dissolve the government and given their resignations. So the legislative branch and the executive branch are quite closely tied in to work with each other. The judiciary branch, on the other hand, operates a little independently. It scrutinizes the laws that the legislative branch creates or amends and the executive branch implements, and it also metes out justice when these particular laws are violated. So that is what the judiciary branch is there for. So in a summary, what we saw was the legislative branch will create laws. I'm sorry, I'm terrible at writing. The legislative branch will create laws that the executive branch will implement, and the judiciary branch will see to it that these laws are upheld. Uh, Please remember that this explanation is on a very basic level. It's an overview. It's meant to be oversimplified, and as we go further, we will discuss in detail all the vertical hierarchies that I have ignored so far. On a very broad level, this is what the Constitution intended the government to be divided by: a branch that legislates on issues, a branch that executes issues, and finally a branch that metes out justice. But of course, there are many complexities involved for all of these, and as we go down and examine these at the grassroots level, things will become clearer. So, moving on, let's talk about the legislative branch now. As I've been saying so far, the legislative branch, as the name suggests, is created to legislate on issues or create or amend laws on issues. These issues are mentioned in the lists that we saw earlier in the Constitution, the three lists: the union list, the state list, and the concurrent list. So issues in these three lists are something upon which the legislative branch will create or amend laws on. Apart from these, the legislative branch is also responsible for passing the annual budget, as well as passing other money bills. What money bills are bills that are related to taxation. How much tax should be levied? We have taxes at an annual level. We have the income tax, we have sales tax, we have so many different taxes. So how are taxes levied? What level of taxes should be levied? What percentage of taxes should be levied? And government expenditure. Government expenditure means the amount of money that the government is going to spend on anything that the government is supposed to spend money on. So that is when the budget comes in. How much money is the government? How much money is the government supposed to spend on roads or on railways? So bills related to government expenditure and bills related to taxation. These are money bills, and an annual budget is a sort of a money bill as well. So issues, all of these issues are something on which the legislative branch will basically operate on, or that is what is in scope for the legislative branch to do. Remember, this is at a union level rather than a state level. So only the Rajya Sabha has a certain power to legislate on issues in the state list, but the parliament in general legislates on issues in the union list and the concurrent list. So this ends our brief on the legislative branch. We will further examine each component of the legislative branch and ask a certain number of questions for them. We will go through a framework of questions through which each of the entities will be passed through, which will make things clearer for us. So the legislative branch, which is nothing but the parliament, which is nothing but the president, the Rajya Sabha, and the Lok Sabha. We will examine each of these three entities in further detail and ask the following questions for each of them. How are they elected or appointed? What is their purpose? What purpose do they solve? Why was the need for such an entity in the first place? What are the powers or duties of this entity in this particular position? And lastly, how do they all work together? So we will take each of these entities, the President, the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha, and ask these questions about them. And this is pretty much the same structure that we are going to follow for the rest of the series as well. For every particular entity that we encounter in the government, we will ask a certain set of questions which will hopefully make things clear for us.